Buju Gakanawea, Kelsey Halderson Nindishnakas, and today I am going to be reading a very special book to you called Mabels Feather, written by Nicole Kelley, illustrated by Jasmine Richardson. The sky was bright when Mabel brushed the sleep from her eyes. She had dreamed of her mum, and being with her in her dreams always made her feel like she had never left. She stretched her arms as long as they would go, pushing the sleepiness out of her body. She reached under her pillow for her mum's feather and held it in her hands, remembering how her mum's hair felt when it brushed against her cheek and when she hugged her. She squeezed the feather tight, missing her. She got herself ready and rushed outside. The wind was gusting hard today, so she tucked her feather into the pit of her arm to keep it safe. She waited for Granny in the front yard and played with her dog Brutus. He was a funny thing, running and jumping around, even though he could barely breathe because she had fed him too many table droppings. Brutus brought her his ball and dropped it at her toes. Without thinking, Mabel picked it up and tossed it with the arm holding the feather. Just then, the wind picked up and stole her feather. Her feather tumbled through the air, bouncing across the tops of the trees by neighboring houses until she couldn't see it any longer. Her heart sank as she felt something return that she hadn't felt since her mom went away. Her sadness came back. Grammy kissed her head and spoke to her in their language. "Kiko mo Queen," she said, and they headed to the festival. She yelled for Grammy and told her what had happened. As they arrived at the town square, Grammy gave Mabel another hug, comforting her. "I will do everything I can," she promised, letting go of Mabel's hand. Mabel saw a police officer and ran to her. She knew that the officer could help find her feather. Mabel explained how the wind swept her feather away and that it was very special. The officer looked down, patted her head, and said, "Oh, little girl, while I am so sad for you, I cannot help. I have to catch bad people so that I can keep the town safe. Police business, you understand," she said, turning her back to Mabel. Mabel was sad that the officer didn't understand how important her feather was or why she needed it. After all, the officer had never had the feather help her fall asleep when she had a bad dream. Mabel continued on her journey, searching for someone else to help her. Soon she found a firefighter. She ran up to him and explained how the wind came up and swept her feather away. He looked at her with sympathy in his eyes and patted her head. "Little girl, I am sorry, but I'm busy saving people from fires. I don't have time to look for your feather." "Firefighter business, you understand," he said, turning his back to her. Mabel's sadness felt even heavier now. The firefighter didn't understand how important her feather was or why she needed it. After all, her feather had never tickled his nose and made him laugh. Mabel approached the town plaza with her head hung low. She was losing hope fast. She missed how she could cuddle with her feather to feel better about her day. She missed how happy and safe she felt when she had it. She desperately wished that someone would help her. "I am here to help you. All of my citizens, all of my people, I am here for you." The mayor's voice rang with promise from the stage. Mabel ran towards the stage. If she could get the mayor to help, she could get her feather back. She reached her hand up as high as it would go and hoped that he would help her. "You there, little girl," he said, his eyes meeting hers. "What can I help you with today?" he asked. "I have lost my feather, Mr. Mayor, and it is very important to me. You see, the wind—" The mayor chuckled into the microphone, drowning Mabel out. "I'm sorry, little girl, but this meeting is for people with important questions about our town. Mayor business, you understand," he finished, moving on to the next person. Mabel approached the town plaza with her head hung low. She was losing hope fast. She missed how she could cuddle with her feather to feel better about her day. She missed how happy and safe she felt when she had it. She desperately wished that someone would help her. Mabel's sadness felt overwhelming now. The mayor had laughed at her in front of everyone. He didn't understand why her feather was so important to her, but he didn't have to humiliate her. After all, he had never given her feather a hug when he felt lonely. Mabel spotted her Grammy and ran to her. Defeated, they headed home together. Mabel couldn't hold in her sadness any more. She let a river of tears run down her face. Her grandma scooped her up and cuddled Mabel into her chest. "Grammy, where's my feather?" "Oh, honey," she said, holding her tight, "I don't know." "She was everything to me," Mabel sobbed. "She was everything to me too," Grammy whispered, holding Mabel tight. Grammy shifted Mabel off her lap and patted the seat next to her. "A pin, my girl," she said. "Oma biun." She continued, moving toward her counter where she kept her special things. Grammy took something from it and turned it back toward Mabel. "I know that this isn't your feather," she started, "but it can be our feather if we share it." The little girl took the feather and held it close to her face. This feather was bigger and didn't smell like her mother, but she liked that it reminded her of Grammy's house. She held it against her nose and noticed that it tickled the same as her mother's feather did. For the first time that day, Mabel smiled. She felt her Grammy's arms wrap around her and squeeze. Mabel knew then that she didn't have to hold her sadness by herself anymore because she had Grammy. She reached up with their shared feather and tickled Grammy's nose. "Awas," she said, tickling Mabel back. Together they sat and played for some time with their feather. They laughed and shared memories of Mabel's mother, and for the first time in a long time, Mabel felt some of her sadness lift. She realized that she hadn't ever been alone. While she missed her mom terribly, her grandma had always been there. She looked at her grandma and in their language said, "Gisagiin kukum?" Grandma put her hand over her heart and repeated, "Gisagiin." About the author. Nicole Kelley is a Métis Heritage Elementary School teacher, Indigenous hoop dancer, and strong advocate for Indigenous students. This story came from the desire to put context into the MMIWG2S events for students of all ages in the spirit of reconciliation. Mabel's feather mirrors the relationship between her daughters and their Indigenous granny, who continues to support their entire family in the journey of learning.